Hi there. So this is a little bit of a different video, a little bit more of a hobby chat again, kind of ad hoc, set things up a little bit. But I wanted to kind of dive back into looking at what we looked at last week here on Because of Dragons. So last week I talked a little bit about Mordheim, as you can see here. Got the living rulebook up. I did mention that there was the resources that you could go and find online from Broheim, was the company, well, the collective that has been sort of working on the Mordheim rulebook, as you can see here. This is the living rulebook that came out a couple of years ago, produced in a mood of madness by Games Workshop. So this one was sort of put together by Jake Thornton, as you can see, and it kind of contains everything else that you'd want when it came to diving into Mordheim, really, and sort of exploring the game and what you wanted to do with it, and basically playing without the need to have a physical rulebook. So if you were missing a copy of the physical rulebook like I had last week, then this is the perfect place to come and get it. I'm just going to show you where it is. So you need to go to broheim.net and you'll find everything here in terms of resources. So you got the core rules, additional news from Tumas, who's the original creator of the game alongside the rest of the team at Games Workshop, and then they've basically collected together all of the different elements that came to sort of collectively create Mordheim over the years. So you've got Empire in Flames, you've got the Mordheim Annual, you've got all the different rules there, you've got the Best of Town Crier as well. It's a really good collection of resources for anybody who wants to dive into Mordheim, really. So if you've not seen this before, then I would highly recommend going to check it out and seeing what you think. It's a really good way to sort of explore Mordheim without having to have any of the physical publications. Although obviously it would be nice to have a couple of them. But anyway, so that was kind of where I wanted to start things off, basically showing everybody where on the internet you could find everything. But then I was thinking about trying to find miniatures in order to play the game, and so that's what we're going to be going through here. A lot of these are going to be first party Games Workshop stuff, but I'm also going to look at some alternative options for people as well, kind of exploring the world of miniatures that a lot of people have put together for you to kind of use for Mordheim, but not really. These have been around for a while, and some of these might not even be in print anymore, so you've got to be a little bit aware of that when we come to the web stores and things. But if you can find them online on like eBay and stuff, that's a pretty good option as well. So we're going to start off with the sort of official stuff. So we're going to start with some Games Workshop. Now for me, I was a massive fan of the Witch Hunters, and so that's kind of like the focus that I was going for. And a couple of characters that I really liked that came out recently for the Cursed Tower, not Cursed Tower, the Cursed City, Silver Tower is the other Warhammer Quest game, were Galen and Doralia von Denst, who I thought were fantastic. So this gives you a pair of really good sort of Witch Hunter models, and nothing about them is overtly Age of Sigmar, which I think is the main thing with the miniatures that I found here. They could easily fit into the old world and be used for your games of Mordheim set back during that period of history. It's a decent kit. Obviously it's £32.50 here in the UK. If you wanted to try and find it elsewhere online, then that's obviously a big thing, so you've got to make sure you do that. Go and find some sort of local stores or online stockists who will do it for a little bit cheaper. You get 20% off in most places nowadays, so that's something to bear in mind. But if you're looking for a pair of character models, these are some pretty awesome ones that I think would definitely fit the bill for Witch Hunter warbands. Now, obviously, these two could be used as a couple of Witch Hunters. You've got kind of a Witch Hunter captain and a standard Witch Hunter, and I like the fact that you can have the story between them as well. You could kind of build up a reputation and a relationship between them, because obviously it's a family business, hunting down witches. But then obviously you need some miniatures, and so that's where the likes of these come in. So the Flagellants. So this kit has been around since Warhammer, I think it's 7th or 8th edition, and it would be fantastic for you putting together your group of zealots. Flails are great in the game anyway, so you probably want to play around with those. But the thing that's really nice about these is that they continue to carry over that Warhammer Fantasy Battles aesthetic that you'll be very familiar with from Mordheim and stuff. And so setting these into the world of Mordheim back in the day just kind of makes sense to me. I think they'd be a great set to play around with, lots of bits and kit and stuff for you to play with. I think the sprue is fairly kind of open to your tinkering as well, although unfortunately we're not getting to see the sprue in this bit. But anyway, I think a lot of it is sort of body and then legs, and then you decide on the arms and the head options, which I think is pretty awesome for an old Games Workshop kit. It means you can play around with it a lot and have fun with it. So yeah, so that's what I was thinking when it came to sort of witch hunters. But of course we've got a whole bunch of other warbands that you can play around with, and so we're going to go through these now. So Free Guild great swords, a good option if you're looking to put together a one of the Empire forces for using Mordheim. I think the greatsword kit is a fantastic one. Obviously it only comes with great swords, but you know, it's a decent kit for putting together slightly more armoured individuals. I'm just going to dive back in actually to a lot more of the website. So if we go back to Cities of Sigmar and actually look through these in more detail, you do still have things like Free Guild handgunners. They'd be pretty good. The Free Guild General also, again, continues that aesthetic from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, so you could easily use him in your games. You've also got a whole bunch of other characters that you could use as dramatis personae. You've got your crossbowmen there as well, which is always nice. And then your Free Guild Guard as well, that you can arm with different variety of weapons too. I think this is what a lot of people used for their Mordheim warbands over the last little while. You can give some of them swords and stuff too, which is always handy. And just get them painted up to match whatever force you're going to be working with, be it Middenheim or Reichsguard or Marienburg. But yeah, so you've got some good options there with the State Troopers still. They're not the greatest kits, they're not very nice to paint, but it gives you some nice options there. We'll come on to more stuff for Empire, I think, a little bit later with some of the more indie developers and designers out there who've done some really nice stuff. But switching over to Skaven, as you can see at the top there, there's a couple of the Warhammer Underworlds kits that I think would be really, really good for people who wanted to start Skaven. There's this one, which was one of the Wave 1 releases for Warhammer Underworlds, so it's available now, pretty cheap. You get 5 models in the kit. You've got a leader and a couple of sort of badass Skaven to play around with as well. They're looking pretty grotty and nasty and gnarly, which is exactly what you want. And again, very importantly for a lot of the Age of Sigmar stuff, there's nothing here that I think would look out of place in Warhammer Fantasy Battles. The armour style is very much the same. The basing looks like the Streets of Mordheim, which I think is a nice little callback as well. And you've got the kind of little gutter areas and stuff there too, which to play around with. But a really nice set of models that I think would be really fun to add into a Skaven warband. I'm only going to be concentrating really on the kind of core warbands from the main rulebook here. But you know, you can find a lot of stuff online for Games Workshop, which would be very handy for this. Interestingly, a lot of the old school Skaven sculpts are still available. I think a few of these, I think it's metal, or are they resin? Wow, these are still metal. So you can still get your hands on some metal gutter runners and use those in your games, which I think is pretty cool. So if you wanted to dive in and play around with that, you can use these to kind of like a bulk up the force that you already got. You've still got the really old sort of dog-faced Skaven Night Runner pack as well. This was the basis for pretty much every Skaven warband back in the day. So, you know, you've still got access to this plastic kit, even if the models are a little bit worse for wear now. Especially compared to the slightly more animated versions that we've seen from Warhammer Underworld. But if you wanted to get a whole bunch of Skaven very, very quickly, this is the way to go, I think. There's a whole bunch of options on the sprues for you to play around with. So you've got your bases, you got your bodies, your legs, and your head separately with the shields there too, and then you match that up with a whole range of different weapons there. So you can have shields in there, which is quite nice. Again, it's not the nicest kit, but it provides you with an option that allows you to go proper old school when it comes to Mordheim, which is very important. There was also a new kit that was released quite recently, which is the Warhammer Underworld's Nether Maze set. This comes with another set of 5 Skaven for you to use in your games. Again, much more animated. The poses and the proportions are a little bit more modern compared to the Night Runners that we saw before, but I think this gives you a really nice set that allows you to sort of dive in and play around with Skaven in a dynamic fashion. And the bases again are designed so that you could pretty much use them in any old school games as well. You've even got all the nice poison globes and balls and nets and that kind of thing there too. So you've got slings and things there, which is very handy for kind of adding a sort of little bit of diversity to your warbands on the tabletop. What I think is really nice about this is that you could combine this one and the original set, I think, from Warhammer Underworlds. So back to this one. And I think they'd work really nice together as a pairing. You've got then 10 models for, I mean, hopefully you'd wait for this one to come out separately. 10 models for around 30 quid, something like that, which allows you to make a pretty decent and dynamic plastic warband. You'd only then need to throw in a couple of additional scaling here and there, maybe using some of those older ones or maybe some metal models, just to kind of give things a little bit of an edge and take things in a different direction. And sort of also bulk up the warband as well, which is always key. Beyond that, we're going to start looking at the undead. So, as we talked about recently, there was the Warhammer Underworlds, not Warhammer Quest Cursed City was the one that came out. And in that, there was a bunch of really awesome models that I think would be really good for those people who are trying to put together undead warbands. Radukar's Court, while expensive, I think is a really good option for those people that want to dive in and play Mordheim. It comes with some really, really nice models in here that could be used as vampires, whilst also being used as necromancers. Like, for example, these two down here would be really good as necromancer models. You could use him as the leader of your skeletons and your ghouls and your zombies on the tabletop. These are your big sort of zombie brutes if you wanted to throw them into the game, which is quite nice. And then, of course, you've got something a little bit more creepy that you could throw in as maybe a foe for everybody to face when they're on the tabletop. But I think this is a really good and characterful box set. If you've got Warhammer Quest Cursed City, then obviously you don't have to buy this separately. You've got all the models already. But I think this is a really nice set for kind of evoking that Mordheim feel without, without sort of being dragged too far in the direction of the Mortal Realms, which is always nice. You've also got this guy, so this was Kritza, the Rat Prince, who I think would be a perfect model to be your kind of vampire leader for a warband in Mordheim. Just stick him on a proper base. But I think he's so Mordheim in his design and his look. You can imagine striding around the cobbled streets of Mordheim, followed by his dregs and his zombies and all sorts of different things, hunting down individuals to drain their blood. I think he's a really, really cool model. There's a couple of other vampires within the Soulblight Gravelords that I think would be really good for this, but I think he's possibly one of the best and the most Mordheim looking of them, I think. You've also got this old school Necromancer from 8th edition, another plastic kit, still really good, and you could do a lot with that as well. But a perfectly good Necromancer for a pretty decent price, which is always nice. To kind of bulk up your undead warband, there's a couple of different options as well. So you have the Dead Walker Zombies as well. Again, looking great. If you wanted to, you could sort of snap off all the roots and stuff that they've added into these, but I think it kind of adds to them. I like the idea that they've kind of staked their graves to them to try and keep them in place, because everything in Mordheim keeps coming back to life. I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, it's a really nice little set of zombies. Lots of characterful options there. I mean, there's a couple of dupes. I think there's maybe one or two that are duped. But, it's not too bad if you were putting together a shambling horde. They're much more animated and much easier to put together than your standard zombies from back in the day, which is also a boon. You've also got the Death Rattle Skeletons, which could be used in your games. Still looking great. Again, sort of getting across that idea of maybe this was the Mordheim City Guard before things turned evil and nasty and horrible and the comet hit it. But you could use these to sort of take the place of more undead servants. I'm just going to show off a few more actually from the Grand Alliance of Death, because you'll actually need ghouls too. Thankfully they do a whole bunch of ghouls still. So you've still got the Aberrant Archregent who could be used as a ghoul leader. The Crip Gast Courtiers there are still the old school ghouls, so you can use them in your games. And there's even the Grim Watch here as well, which is a nice set of slightly more personalised ghouls for you to use in your games. So if you were kind of going down the route of trying to sort of ape the look of the old metal ghouls with their sort of like weird misshapen hands and things, then this is the way to go. And that's a pretty nice set there. On the possessed side of things, I think going to look at Warcry is the best way to go, because Warcry put together a whole bunch of different Warhammer sort of chaos warbands for you to play as that would be amazing when dropped into Mordheim. So you've got a whole bunch of different styles here that you could use. You've got the Unmade, which is quite nice, the Corvus Cabal, the Splintered Fang, the Cypher Lords, the Untamed Beasts, and the Iron Golems. Now, the way that I see this working is that you'd buy maybe 2 or 3 of these kits, or maybe just 2 of these kits. You don't need all of them. These are specifically done for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I think you can buy them in smaller packs from the Warcry section of their website. But you'd buy a couple of these and you'd kit bash together like a set of them. Like, for example, the Unmade and the Corvus Cabal together. I think would look really good. I think that'd be a really fun option for you to use on the tabletop. And again, a bunch of characterful models that don't look so overtly Mortal Realms that you could be completely lost when it came to dropping them into Mordheim. I think these would work really, really well. Especially these. I think these would be great as like pit fighter warbands and stuff that you found in the depths of Mordheim. And then you've got the Iron Golems here, which I think are another fantastic set. Especially some of these smaller individuals, I think would be really good to throw into your games. And you could use one of these big boys as your actual possessed, or I mean, imagine if that was your possessed. That would be pretty cool. I like the idea of using one of those in your games as a possessed. I think if I was going to go for any of them, it would be the Unmade. I think it's probably the best and the most sort of creepy and weird and gothic. I mean, there's a guy there who has ripped his own face off, which I think is pretty weird and creepy. So there we go. Who wouldn't want to play as a guy who's ripped his own face off? But yeah, so there's some really good options there for playing around as the possessed, and kind of covered a lot of the different bases when it comes to those core warbands. There's definitely some stuff that you could check out online from different creators as well, though. So this is Black Chapel Miniatures. I'm not sure whether or not they're still selling miniatures, but the website is still here and they still have prices on all the models and things. So if you're looking to put together a Reichsguard warband, there we go, some really nice miniatures for you to use there. I like that you've got the choice of actually putting together a proper warband there, as you can see. So use that as the basis of your warband and then add some plastic models in alongside it. These are white metal miniatures rather than being plastic, but it's a pretty awesome set of miniatures for you to use to sort of lead the way as the Reichlanders. You also had the Steamheim group, so this is kind of moving a little bit more towards Nuln, but it kind of offers up a couple of additional options there. The other warband they never did Marienburg, although you could kind of use the Altreich stuff as Marienburg if you just painted them differently. These are slightly more themed in that regard, so you have your sort of Middenheimers here looking much more brutal and nasty. Add these in alongside maybe some plastic models, as I was saying before, and you've got a really nice set of miniatures for you to use in your games. Some really good stuff there. Lots of hammers and lots of furs, which is always nice. I said I was going to talk about the core warbands, but I couldn't go without talking about their dwarves as well. So if you wanted to make an army of dwarven treasure hunters, then they have pretty much everything you could want for this. You have all your classic dwarves there, including the prince who's leading the way, and then you have the fanatic as well. So you've got a troll slayer you could throw into the game too, which is always nice. Gripping Beast also actually do quite a lot of good miniatures. So they have this Commander of the Order Militant that I think would be really, really good if you're putting together a Witch Hunter warband. A really good option there. Painted up very nicely as well, as you can see. Very nice models from Gripping Beast. Yeah, I think it just has all the hallmarks of a very good Witch Hunter captain, really. You've also got the Hexenjäger, who are sort of like the Jaeger, or the sort of Witch Hunters, the Magic Hunters. Again, just use these and maybe cut the crosses off, perhaps, and I think you've got some really good Witch Hunter members for you to use in your games, which is very cool. There's 2 packs of those, as you can see there, that I think would be absolutely fantastic. Just turn those into hammers, maybe, and you've pretty much got a Witch Hunter warband ready to go. They were what I was going to use when I was looking at diving back into Mordheim, which is pretty nice. You also have these fanatics as well, so you could use these as part of your Witch Hunter warband, or you could use these as part of your Cult of the Possessed, because they have the familiar sort of cultist hat thing going on, the big pointed hats. Use those as your Cult of the Possessed alongside maybe some of those plastic miniatures that we saw earlier. It's kind of like your base lackeys that you've sort of dragged along with you. I think it'd be kind of cool. There's actually a couple more websites that I want to try and bring up actually. So I'm just going to type, there we go. We'll go to that in a second. So another one of the collections that has been very much focused around Warhammer Fantasy and kind of Mordheimy stuff over the last while is the Dunkeldorf Miniatures collection by King Games. This started off on Kickstarter back in 2019 and it has grown exponentially ever since. I'm just going to bring up a couple of the different elements here because there are so many amazing miniatures in this collection that you could use to put together a Mordheim warband that would fit pretty much all of the sort of requisites of the standard mercenary sets. I think these are really great, and they've done a really good job of putting together both kind of male and female models for a lot of the different warband types and sort of factions and races and lineages and that kind of thing. So it's been really cool seeing all this come together. So there you go. You can see some of the kind of the people that you could use to fill out your warbands, and also beyond. You could use these as NPCs and objectives in your games of Mordheim. You've got your gong farmers. Who wouldn't want to play around with some gong farmers? Pretty badass looking sort of dwarven bandit mercenary there. You got your Witch Hunter captain, if you want to throw one of those in. One of the new resin miniatures that they've been working on beyond the metal range. There's your sort of outdoor captain you could use in your games, or maybe a Marienburg sellsword. He's got the sort of the Cult of Myrmidia sort of stuff on his braces there, which will kind of tie him into Marienburg, which is quite nice. Another watch captain model, again a female one, which is quite nice to see. Sort of spice things up. You've got your ogre mercenary there, done as a lovely lady, which I think is really nice. So yeah, it's a really nice little set of miniatures for you to use if you're looking to build things up and throw a little bit of additional character into your games in Mordheim. I think it's generally one of the best ranges out there for sort of Warhammer Fantasy adjacent miniatures. And what I think is really good about it as well is that you could use this for Warhammer Fantasy roleplay as well. So if you're maybe playing the game incorrectly, as some people would say, but I think correctly with miniatures, you have some really good characters that would be very, very good for making player characters and villains in your games of Warhammer Fantasy roleplay if you were hitting the tabletop with them. So yeah, some good stuff there. I also flashed up this. So this is Mon Miniaturas, which is a Spanish creator, and he has been doing a really, really good job of creating fantastic miniatures that could be used for Mordheim that kind of fulfill the role of Marienburg, because that's kind of one of the factions that I don't think a lot of people really dive into too easily. For example, you've got the Paymaster there, and a whole bunch of pirates and noblemen and crossbowmen and lancers and archers and Arabian warriors sort of going to Araby and that kind of thing. Arquebusier, you've got a guy with a peg leg, steppe warriors from Kislev, and all that kind of stuff. I think this is a really, really good collection of miniatures that come in resin. They're very, very nice. That you could be using to fill out all of those mercenary armies that we were talking about before. I think it's a really fantastic looking collection. They even have a Felix Jaeger, which is always nice to see. I think this is genuinely one of the... I think this, alongside the Blackchapel stuff, is probably some of the best kind of alt Mordheim, but not really Mordheim stuff for you to use in your games. It's very much hitting the nail on the head, I think, which is always nice to see. You've also got some witch hunters as well, if you wanted to fill out that side of your collection. You know, everyone loves witch hunters, and there's plenty of ways to do that with the miniatures from people around nowadays. But yeah, so it's a really good selection of options for you to pick from. They even have, let me just find the dwarves. Here we go. See, I'm doing this on the fly. They even have there we go. I got Trek and Felix together, which is pretty awesome. I have those models myself, and I really enjoyed them. But yeah, there's even some options in it. You could find some very kind of Ulian Makan style models within this collection, I think. Sort of playing around with, like, you know, you've got your big guy with a club, and then a sort of more dashing rogue with his rapier at the side. You could easily do a lot of the dramatis personae using these particular miniatures, I think. But yeah, so if you're interested in Mordheim and you want to dive in and play the game based on what we were talking about last week here on the channel, the rules are all out there for you to dive into and find, all free, effectively. And there are loads of miniatures that you can choose from to make your warbands, be it official ones, as you can see here, or unofficial ones from a variety of different creators. I hope this maybe sort of gives you a little bit of a kind of a look at the different options that are still out there for you to play the game. And I'd really love to hear if there are any miniature creators out there that you think would be absolutely fantastic for creating miniatures for Mordheim warbands that I've maybe missed and stuff. I know that there are a lot of different creators out there, obviously. This is a nice selection, a list that's put together by the folks at Broheim. But I tried to kind of pick out ones that I thought were more specifically Mordheim, that kind of fit the style and the aesthetic of the game. But this is a very good list for you to sort of draw from. I'm going to have links to everybody down below so you can have a look at them and see what you think, all the different creators and stuff, and obviously this page as well. But yeah, let me know what you think, because I think Mordheim deserves to be played a lot more, and there's definitely the options to do that by looking out online and checking out a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video today. It was an interesting sort of look through what's out there on the internet, I think. Make sure to comment and share and all that kind of good stuff. Like and drop me a subscription as well if you want. I also, as I often say, have my Ko-fi link that you can go and check out as well, which is a good way of supporting me with some sort of charitable donations, as it were. I probably won't spend it on coffee, but I will spend it on tea. Anything is great, but if you don't have the means to do so, then don't worry about it. Just sharing and liking and commenting is enough for me. So yeah, hopefully I'll be back with something maybe a little bit similar to this in the future. But yeah, I hope you have fun hunting out some very cool Mordheim miniatures. Bye for now.